Welcome back to Sprague Homestead. This week we're going to continue on with our YouTube collaboration, and top 15 questions, or 15 questions with, is going to involve Jim's in-town garden. All right, so let's get right to the questions. Jim, what do you think is the biggest mistake that new homesteaders make?
You know, with me, I can share a lot of mistakes that I think people make. Number one, getting into it blind. Going into different things that they thought, wow, I see other people doing and I want to do that. And then they start doing that and they get discouraged. Things don't go right. My suggestion would be to study up. You know, there's a lot of YouTube channels that share great content. Ones who have done this for a lot of times. Be careful with the information. You know, for those that are getting into this, those who are new to homesteading, be careful with the information. You know, ask questions from ones who have done this. Don't just go to a channel and, oh, they raise rabbits and look at the rabbits that they have. Because a lot of times, you're only seeing the best. You know, one big channel that I watch, Lum the Acres, I love this channel. I love the couple. But they're real. They show you even the mistakes that they make. Some of the mistakes. I'm sure they don't show you all the good things, or all the bad things, but be careful.
No, I'll definitely agree, and I think that's why we did our video on why the internet is dangerous. You see a lot of success out there. Again, a lot of people don't want to share their failures or where they're struggling. They want it to always seem like everything's great and it's easy to do, and oh, look at a success, and it lulls you into a false sense of security that, well, I can do that, right? It's just, you know, gardening is just putting seeds in the ground and throwing some water on it. Ta-da, garden. And really, I think, yeah, there's a lot that can go into it where you can not do enough research, or you only follow the successful people that are creating the trends or doing well at trends, and it can bite you in the end.
Yeah, I see that an awful lot where people, like right now, everybody's in the homesteading world seems like really excited about having their own milk cow. And the number of people I see in some of the groups or that send me messages that are like, this is just so much more than we really want or we really need. And they kind of got pressured into it because, hey, that's what everybody else is doing. And not a big cow fan, so we're kind of resisting that. But yeah. Good point, Jim. That's how we feel about it too, is that too much going in blind, not enough research.
So knowing that, what would you say you would do, or what advice would you give to new homesteaders ready to get started this year?
No, this kind of goes with number one. Study. And don't get into it too big. You know, too fast. Start small. You know, if you're growing vegetables, don't go plow up a 50 by 50 garden. You know, start small. Go with a 10 by 20, or my actual garden, even now, is only 30 by 30. Start small. See if it's something that you like. See if it's something that you and your family can handle.
Well, you definitely touched on one of my favorite things to tell people is start small, don't get ahead of yourself. But yeah, absolutely, study and learn. I know not everybody's good with written word. That's kind of my thing. He prefers videos. But there is something out there for everybody now, whether you want to look through YouTube videos, whether you want to, you know, look at articles online, read books, whatever it is. I still think the best people to talk to are people who have been doing it. And if you don't have access to those, probably YouTube is a really good way to go, or somebody who's written a book about their experience. But absolutely, I would agree with that.
Yeah, starting small. I mean, I think Jim says a 50 by 50 garden, and you think, well, that's not very big, right? It's not, you know, but think about the math of that. That's 2,500 square feet. I mean, that is a good size house
Yeah.
that you're plowing and trying to put gardening in. And if you have to tend to it and weed it and water it and all that stuff, it can turn into, you know, not a full-time job, but it can turn into a big job to keep 2,500 square feet wet and fertilized and weeded.
Yeah.
And, you know, it can get out of hand.
And keep squirrels out and and everything else. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree
So
with that.
going headlong into a large project for your first time, go small, go slow, invest frugally, and put the work in, not the other way around. Don't invest heavily and put no work in. The work is the key, not the money. All right, Jim, so what is going to be the most favorite animal or your favorite animal you've ever raised?
I bet I know the answer to this one.
Well, I've raised cattle, even though I would like to have my own milk cow. My wife says no, but goats are something that I've never cared for. I like sheep. I've had my own horse. I've trained horses. I love horses. I am really enjoying the rabbits. It's exciting. I really enjoy it. So I'm going to say probably the rabbits, even though like I said, I'm very fond of cattle. I'm very fond of horses. I love working with horses, but I have really enjoyed the rabbits. They're so soothing. I can have a horrible day, and I can go out, especially with the lion heads that we have, and start brushing them and, making of them, and they just calm you. They just calm you. It's so great.
Haha! No, another win for Team Bunny. Who doesn't love the rabbits?
I don't know. But I'll say, yeah, I would say having rabbits as your favorite animal, especially if you've got a smaller homestead, I think they are a huge benefit to why you should have them on your homestead. Big or small, I think they're probably one of the best animals you can probably raise on your homestead.
What's next?
All right, Jim, what is going to be your favorite vegetable that you've ever raised?
I love to raise onions, and I grow huge onions. I mean huge onions. Tomatoes. I can do a great job with tomatoes. Usually peppers, although last year wasn't a good year for peppers. I guess I'm going to have to say tomatoes.
Well, I would say I'm going to have to be envious of that. I would love to grow really big onions. I mean, we have some good onions, I will say that. But I don't think that's like a specialty for us. But tomatoes, we've had years where we have out of control tomatoes. And
Yeah.
we've also had years where tomatoes have been a struggle.
I have a love-hate relationship with onions. One, I never have them last as long through the winter as I want them to. And I've never gotten an onion bigger than about that. I mean, that which is still a good-sized onion,
It is.
especially for two of us, because we're not huge onion people. But tomatoes, who doesn't? Every time we watch a gardening show or Homestead Rescue or any of these other things, it's the first thing everybody grows. I'm pretty sure that salsa is one of the most underrated things in the entire world.
Well, it's like probably number 2 to guacamole, which is what the number 1 rated thing.
No, I think so. I think ketchup is still considered the number
Is it?
one condiment in the world.
Well,
I think.
then maybe tomatoes are the source of all delicious condiments in the world.
Maybe.
Maybe that's why they're number 1. All right, we're getting off track here. All right, Jim, what was your best day on your homestead?
The day, which would have been, I'm going to say in June, when Sugar, that first doe that we had when she had those kids, I saw that fawn color. It's like a reddish, tannish reddish color. When she had those babies, that was exciting. When I had so many people say, you need to get rid of that doe. People around here, you need to get rid of that doe. It wasn't meant to be. And I was like, you know what? For somebody that's raising animals, for profit, yeah, probably I should have done something with her. But she's such a sweet girl.
I gotta pretty much hold with Jim on this one because I've had this happen. So most people know I raise American Blues, which are a rare breed, which is really, really tough to find replacement stock. And I had bought these 2 really beautiful sisters. One bred right away, the other one nothing and nothing and nothing and nothing. And everybody was telling me, you've got to cull her. And we pretty much have a pretty strong philosophy around here of non-productive needs to go. There are exceptions to everything, of course. We've got some rabbits that are pets and retirees, and we're getting ready to retire some goats, but they've still got to do something. Like the goats still are a part of the land clearing. The rabbits are currently working in the greenhouse. So I had this doe. Couldn't do much of anything else with her. Couldn't show her. She had screwed up some some of her eyelid, like right above her eye, and couldn't show her. She was beautiful, probably the best typed American I've ever owned. And I just couldn't. Attitude was terrible. The kid who had owned her before me, I don't know what happened there, but I just couldn't bring myself to cull her. And so I kept trying and I kept trying. And at 2.5, everybody told me, man, you've just got to give up on this. So I went against my better judgment and I left her in with my buck for 3 weeks, which is a no-no. I'll talk about that in another video. But I did it anyway. And she's a big girl. She can defend herself. And pulled her out. And 3 days later, she starts pulling all of her hay out and building a nest on the wire. And I thought, dear God in heaven, there's no way. There's no way. I've been trying and trying with this doe, and there's no way. At 2.5, she's got to have too much fat in her ovaries. There's no way. And she kindled a litter of 9 stunningly beautiful American blues and whites. Several of them I grand championed. A lot of them went to start new herds. And after that, I got only about 3 more litters out of her, and then she croaked. But that litter, that beautiful litter, and as those babies grew, I was like, this right here was worth it. So I understand exactly what you're saying, Jim.
So anyway, speaking of does passing away, Jim, what's going to be your worst day on your homestead?
Well, I'm going to go to something recent. Another doe that we had purchased. We had bought 3 does and our first lionhead buck. I was sitting, at the time I had those in outside cages because I was right in the process of building the shell of our rabbit barn. Well, this one doe, her name is Bella. I had her on my lap and I noticed that she had diarrhea and she just started this. And I said, okay, I need to tend to that. I brought her in. I wanted to clean her back end up. So I brought her in, and my wife and I was holding her, and Leanna was kind of damp sponging her hind end, and we noticed that she had maggots. We noticed that they were inside her on her tailbone. So I called vets. I called all the vets that I could, and one who's about 60 miles away, a little over 60 miles away. They said, if you can get her in the next hour, we'll look at her. So I brought her in, and the vet says, oh, we can take care of her, not a problem. So they brought her in. We said, we'll be back. She'll be all set in about 15 minutes, while I waited for about a half hour. And then finally somebody came out, and they called me in. By this time, this bill was up over $300. And they wanted to keep her overnight because nobody could work after a certain hour. That was going to be over $100 bill, just the overnight thing. And then they said that they would probably have to take part of her tail off, part of her backbone off. She wouldn't be able to live a normal life. So I said, go ahead and put her to sleep. That was probably my hardest day because it was my fault. And one thing that I learned on that, and this is what the vet had told me, when that fly lays those eggs, 3 hours is when those maggots will start, and they start eating into the flesh and eventually into the bone.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Jim, probably what started that was the diarrhea or the loose stools was probably because it had already started. Unfortunately, fly strike in rabbits is usually fatal. I know very few people who have had any luck saving a rabbit. It's just kind of one of those things we deal with. We personally have been pretty fortunate that we've never had a case of it, but I did have a case of it in a chicken once, and yeah, it is absolutely a horrible, horrible thing to deal with. We also had a llama come down with it one time, and we were able to save her. She later died of something else. She was already having all kinds of complications from, unfortunately, poor management. That was when we were involved in the rescue, and we're taking in rescue animals.
Yes.
So we had a doe go down and end up with fly strike, and it was horrendous. And
But it goes so fast. That's the thing that you I think about that though. Just 3 hours.
3 hours.
It's a blink of an eye. I mean, it could be something that you check the animals before work the day, and you could come home at lunch. Think about that. You come home at lunch, and it's done. It's already happened. You're like, whoa, what happened?
Advanced to a point where it's, especially in small animals when you're dealing with rabbits and chickens and that kind of stuff, it's almost always fatal. It's just the odds of you catching it in time to actually, stop it, very, very, very difficult. I'm sure you feel horrible, Jim, but really, don't take it on yourself. It's just unfortunately one of those things that happens.
All right, now Jim is up there in Maine, and I would say that's probably one of the places that I would not go homestead. It's probably as tough as it is to homestead here, so it's probably not on my top of my list of places to go. The question is, Jim, why do you homestead where you are?
I'd like to be homesteading somewhere else, but we bought this property. Like I said, it's an in-town lot. I've got just about an acre, probably closer to 3/4 of an acre. So we do the best with what we've got.
I think Jim in this is downplaying his acreage. 3/4 to a full acre, on the right conditions, can be, almost too much. If you can really grow animals or vegetables or anything else, you can do a ton with an acre in the right conditions. And I think Jim is doing a fantastic job with what he's got. He's super busy. If you've seen his upload schedule, is kind of, I won't say sporadic in that, but he takes days and maybe sometimes weeks between uploads because the man is busy. He's a machine. He's a machine. He is.
That's such a guy thing to say.
Okay, it is, but still.
You're doing great with what you've got, Jim. And as long as you're making it work and you're happy with it, that's all that matters.
Exactly. Okay, so the machine is a guy thing, so I'm going to break it into, Jim, what is your favorite tool on the homestead?
Well, I can think of all kinds of tools. And this is going to throw some people off, I think. I've got a old Boland's tractor, and I've got a rototiller with that, and I love rototilling the ground. I love seeing that fine soil that this rototiller can do. But my most valuable tool that I have, it's going to be my Bible. It's going to be my Bible.
Now, I'll say after we did the interview with Peter and he said his chainsaw was his favorite, I was like, chainsaws! Yes, big power tools! And then Jim comes in with his and he says this Bible, and I'm like, what?
That was a reaction too.
It was like shock, because I never, and really when I came up with this question, I really was only thinking like hand tools, power tools, chainsaws, hammers, screw guns, things like that. So I had to sit there for a second and think, a Bible, why would a Bible be his favorite tool? And then I thought, think about homesteading, and there is a huge amount of physical labor and everything that goes into that. But we've talked about it in other videos about kind of the mental, spiritual aspect of homesteading. Mm-hmm. And really, there are going to be days for new homesteaders, and even us some days, that you've been at this 20 years, and there are days that we just feel, you just feel crummy, I guess. I won't say broken or anything else, but you have tough days, and you've got to kind of dig down deep a little bit and find something to help center your mindset a little bit, to get through to tomorrow, to go right back at it. You did bad today, you failed today, maybe you lost an animal, you lost your complete garden to squirrels. We've been there, but you've got to find something. Right? There's got to be something to help spiritually and mentally get you back focused. And I think that's an awesome answer. Just unexpected. I'd never thought of it, but I think it's a valuable tool. In the right hands, a Bible would be just hugely valuable.
Yeah, you're right. It was an answer neither of us expected, but both of us greatly respect. So thanks for such an interesting and well thought out answer, Jim, and for really making other homesteaders that watch this think a little bit.
So Jim, really, what kind of inspired you to get into homesteading?
Now I want to know what I'm eating. I want to know where it came from. My vegetables, I use no herbicides, no pesticides. I'm very careful with the seeds that I plant. I know how it was preserved. the rabbits. That was part of the reason that we got into the rabbits. I wanted good meat for my table. The other thing is my wife and I wanted to start doing something with the pelts. I want to know what I'm eating.
That seems to be the answer that like everybody so far has kind of had as, you either want to know what you're eating, and you always kind of wanted to do it yourself, which was kind of what brought us to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's pretty common. I think everybody's has a little bit of a personal challenge that they want to,
See what you can do
for themselves.
Yeah.
And that could be growing, canning, preserving, raising animals. You want to know what's in your food, obviously. I guess I don't know anybody that has no interest in what's in their food. There are some that are on the other extreme that they want to know every letter of every spelling of every word that's in their food kind of deal, and that's a whole other separate thing. But I think doing it yourself is a fantastic reason to even get started and have interest. All right, Jim, so knowing you do a lot of gardening, what is your growing zone and what kind of challenges do you face in that zone?
I was always under the understanding that we were in zone 5. But you know what? We're right in that zone 4, right on that borderline of 4 and 5. The biggest challenge that I have is it's a very short season. Normally, right around Labor Day is our first frost, although the last couple years we haven't had it then. But as far as getting into the garden, as a lot of you might remember in the videos that I was doing last year and year before, especially when I was planting the flower seeds and some of the vegetable seeds, May 1st is when the last snow typically leaves my front lawn. So I get in my garden late, and we can have a frost in June. Many times we've had it. In fact, I think it was 3 years ago, we had a frost the end of June. I had to cover everything in my garden. So that would be my biggest challenge.
Well, I think we can totally identify this. Obviously, you're in a even rougher, shorter season than we are. We complain a lot about being like 5B, 6A, but I totally agree with what you're saying about when you look at the maps now, and I was reading an article about this the other day, that the USDA is considering redoing the maps because things have changed, and so a lot of them aren't terribly accurate anymore, because it says for us 6, and we get way colder than that. We're definitely more of a 5B than a 6A. So I think you probably have the same problem where it's just tweaked a little bit and it's not quite the same thing, but definitely have the same really short season, cold snaps, all that uncomfortably unfun stuff.
I don't think you can even go by a map anymore. I think you almost have to, go to Google or whatever and pin it where you exactly live, and then you almost have to look at all the stuff around you within a couple hundred miles to know. Maybe you're dead center of, 5 or 4 or something else, and it's like, okay, this one's clearly we're right there.
Yeah.
But there are so many. We've talked to a lot of people on this, and there are so many that are like, well, we're kind of this, and then we got a little of that, and it's kind of like you almost have to go, okay, well, I'm kind of in all these, so I kind of have to map the extremes of where they overlap, and then you've got to look at the lowest temperatures you can reach.
That's
the
how I
highest
did.
temperatures.
That's how I did ours. Is I looked it up on the map, and then it told us that we were 6A, and then I looked for what the average bottom temperature is, and really we were more 5B.
Yeah. All right, Jim. So, cleaning is probably both of our least favorite farm chores. So, what is going to be your least favorite farm chore?
I can't butcher my own animals. I have to take them to somebody and have them done. I've gotten really soft-hearted when it comes to that. So, my probably least farm chore would be loading those animals up and taking them to have them processed.
I think that is one that is, I won't say it's on our least favorite chore, but it's something we had to get over, and I think everybody has to get over that. I don't know if you want to call it fear or yuck factor or whatever it is of processing animals. If you do it, if you're growing your own meat, you're probably going to process them to a certain point, or you've got to hand them out. But
Yeah, I don't know that everybody has to get over it. Obviously, Jim's found a way to manage it. There's quite a few people in Oregon now that are hiring other people to do the rabbits and chickens and stuff for them.
Yeah.
I the first couple times we did chickens were horrible.
Yeah.
Just mentally and emotionally. Now it doesn't bother us a whole lot. We kind of understand it's a circle of life kind of thing, and we treat them as well as they can be treated while they are alive, and respect the chickenness of the chicken and the bunniness of the bunny, and understand that everything's got to eat. So.
Yeah.
But, I will admit the rabbits were a really tough one for me. It's only been in the last year that I've started really helping with the dispatch. And even then, sometimes I just can't. If there's an older one that has to be put down that's, for whatever reason, he has to do it.
Yeah.
I can't.
She literally puts it in the carrier and just says, there it is. And then she just don't talk to me about it anymore.
Yeah, I can't always deal with that.
Yeah.
And,
but I'll say this. The first year that I lived here, I played the fact that I had to work all the time when it was time to dispatch and butcher rabbits. It took me a while to kind of get over it. I mean, I guess I don't really have any affection for chickens. They're chickens, right? I like chicken wings. I like chicken legs. That one was a no-brainer to me. It didn't really bother me. But the rabbit thing, for whatever reason, in my mind, they're just different. I just saw them differently, and it took me a while to kind of get over that. And her dad taught me how to butcher out a rabbit. And then kind of once I got used to it, then the engineer kicked in me, and then I was like, oh, look, this is a process. So now I can go in and, as an engineer, how do I cut down time, and how do I get it faster and faster and faster and faster? So that's my personality.
I'll admit the thing that kind of turned the corner for me on the rabbit thing is a California, New Zealand named Fred. Fred was a biter. And about the third time he latched onto my arm, and my rabbits don't bite. That's not something I'm going to keep or deal with. But Fred, I had lost one of my bucks, and I got Fred as a replacement, and turned out Fred wouldn't breed anyway. So luckily that didn't get passed on. But yeah, the third time Fred latched onto me and he got through my shirt into my arm, that kind of turned the corner for me. I was like, you know what? You gotta go. That was it. And then, as a rabbit breeder, you've got to get over the idea of, I don't want to cull them. You can't find pet homes for everything, and you are doing a disservice to your breed. Not everybody can do it. So I totally understand, Jim. Not everybody can do it.
Now, obviously, we're collaborating on this kind of interview series here. But what other content creators do you want to work with this year in 2020?
Nikki and Kanan from Sprague River Homestead. I would love to work with them. I would like to learn more about, which is going to get into another question, working with the rabbits, but also to be able to maybe go off-grid or partially off-grid. And this is one of the things that Kanan does. And if you watch the channel, you can see the solar panels that he's done. There's other ones. I really get a kick out of Brother Dan. He's in Mississippi. I get such a kick out of watching him. I like his mannerism. He's a down-to-earth guy. But I like the joking that he does, too. Kevin and Sarah. And with me just saying that, you'll probably know the channel. They're in the Ozarks. They just got a Jersey cow, finally got it bred back.
Sounds like some really interesting choices, Jim. We'll have to go in there and check that out. But sounds like some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to throw up some links up above of these creators, and then I'll put a link to their channels down in the the description of their channels, so that you guys can go check them out if you've never heard of them like we had. All right, so we're getting towards the end, but this is always a great question. What is the worst job you've ever had?
I have had a lot of jobs. I think my worst job, I started working for a radio station. This is back in the very, very early 90s. I was asked to do radio sales, and that really put me out of my comfort zone. To be a good salesman, in my opinion, You need to be completely sold on your product. Even though I understood that, it just put me way out of my comfort zone. So that would probably be my worst job ever.
I would say I would. I can totally see that. I'm not much of a salesman. As much as I'd like to talk and do other things, selling somebody on a product is probably one of the things I will never look forward to on anything. It's just not me, I guess.
I did some sales for a while when I worked for Lowe's. I was a kitchen cabinet designer.
All right, so final question. What kind of power do you have at your place? And if you could change, what would you change to?
I'm on grid. We buy our electric from an electric company. We are buying our oil. You know, I would like to be more self-sufficient that way at some point, or at least partially. If I could have solar panels, you know, maybe even a windmill.
So I can think Jim's answer would be he's on grid now, potentially solar, potentially wind. That was how we transitioned, right? We've had always been on grid power. Some places we actually didn't have, at any of our places, we've never had natural gas or propane or anything else as kind of like a power input, or however you want to call it. We were never on the grid or in the system for any of that. So, but here, obviously, we're off grid. Power, water, septic. We talked about wind maybe eventually, but it's kind of one of those things, like, it's nifty and neat, but we don't know if it'll pay back here. So we've never gone too far looking at it yet at this point. Too many other things to do along the way.
And I'm sure where you're at, Jim, that's probably really hard to do solar. We talked to somebody recently that commented on another video that was really far north like that, and you don't always get the amount of sun in the winter, and then you get big snow, and it becomes probably more hassle than it's actually worth for the most part. So yeah, we're being a little more self-reliant is always kind of nice.
Yeah.
There's just some parts of the country that it's really, really kind of tough.
All right, so that is the 14 questions. Now, we originally said 15, and as we went through this, we realized Jim never answered the question on what is his ideal homestead size. So 14 questions with Jim's in-town garden. If you would like to be part of this collaboration, drop us a line down in the comments. We will definitely get together, and if you've seen the other videos, you know exactly what the questions are, so we can answer those together, and we'll tell you how to get us the video and how to use it. I think that's it. We've got a couple more in the series so far, and then we're still looking to expand it into the future.
Yep. So thank you, Jim, for taking the time to work with us. Maybe we'll do some more later on. We're kicking around some other ideas.
Yep,
so
definitely got some other ideas
maybe
coming.
a rabbit video. I'm thinking about some rabbit collaboration type stuff, and I've got a few of you that like really comment on a lot of our rabbit videos and that are doing it. So yeah, maybe we'll do a rabbit collaboration going forward.
Yeah.
Because everybody does things a little differently.
They do, absolutely. So that's it for this time, guys. Thanks for checking out this top 15 or 15 questions with. And Jim, thanks for helping us out this week.
And I got to go see what my puppy's chewing on now.
Puppies.
Kids.
So that's it from Sprague Homestead. We'll see you next time.
Happy homesteading.